So, if you've ever worked a job with a terrible boss, terrible manager, or a terrible supervisor, however you want to call it, you'll know it's an awful experience. And in some situations, you can't leave, right? For various commitments that you have, and you're kind of stuck. Um, Sometimes the only way to deal with it is to talk to your coworkers and to be like, make sure that you're not crazy because you don't know sometimes. Sometimes you're like, wait, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm the one doing a bad job, right? But when you talk to your other coworkers, it sort of reaffirms, okay, I'm not crazy. It's actually the boss that's crazy. That's sort of where we are right now in today's world. And I'll just say this, guys, when you guys write comments, because I always ask you questions, I find it really reassuring to know that I'm not crazy. We're not crazy. It's the world simply gone mad. Let's take a look at some comments. And I want to say a lot of things today, and let's jump right in. So this is coming from Pickin' for Gold. This person says, more reasons to get off fossil fuels, less authoritarian oil barons. So I made a video about oil and energy, these kind of things. Another person says here, this comes from Amber. Amber says we need renewable energy so that we can stop doing business with human rights violators. Most countries in that reason have zero to offer in trade except to anyone except oil. We also have this, and I just want to show you guys kind of what's on our mind in our community. Elon Musk is a BRICS bad female dog promoting fascism, isolationism, internal conflict, and economic instability in Western countries. There can be no other conclusion at this point. We also have this. You would think President Musk could find a younger first lady, laughing my butt off. We also have a person saying, is Elon Musk making election interference a full-time job? It seems like it. And this is sort of where this last comment here is something that really wanted me to address this. This is coming from Anthony in Germany. It says, Hamburger, Germany here. Musk is not welcome here. And they say, and I ask, is he regular on your news here too now? He says, even my boys, 12 and 8, so this is actually quite young, even my boys 12 and 8 are constantly in awe about him. So I believe referring to Musk. I take every opportunity to tell them the truth about him and his story, but in school and in SOMe, he is constantly mentioned. We have a culture of calm and second thought and keep the past alive, but the youth claims to get free of the Holocaust and the burden. Again, we're talking about life in Germany. Musk plays exactly like these wishes and need for cheap role models. And unfortunately, the current political leaders are weak and not experienced in international politics and SOMe. And I'm actually, honestly, not sure what he means by SOMe. I just don't know. The early Merkel was a perfect match. The current options I feel to be strong enough to withstand loudmouths like Musk and Trump are unpopular because they get destroyed by our German loudmouths. Even the rich and powerful mentally fall for Musk's and his crony storytelling. It's a mess. Thanks for your thoughts, Chris. So I wanted just to show you all these different comments, and I know we're talking about multiple things at the same time, but that is our current world. It is a complicated place, and when I have these chats with you guys, I just want to share my honest thoughts and not dumb down anything whatsoever. Basically, this is what I see happening right now in the world. We all went through the pandemic. I'm sure you guys know this, and that caused a lot of angst among everyone. I mean, we're all locked up. Who doesn't know this, right? And we all dealt with it in our different ways. It is very real that mental health is a serious problem. Also, you have economic health, right? Both serious problems around the world. So you have a couple different things going on. We also have the rise of social media, which we're still kind of dealing with. I've mentioned this before on the channel. When I first started teaching at university, it was actually required of us to teach internet literacy. At the time, I thought it was a bit strange. Like, why are we talking about internet literacy? Like, why are we doing that? But now looking back, and that was kind of back in like the early 2000s when I first started teaching, it was like it makes perfect sense now why we have this world that we live in, to where you want to teach internet literacy, and there's a generation of people who don't have it at all, or there's people who grow up with it and never really thought about it as being like, I won't say separate from regular life. I'll just say not necessarily real life per se. Because I've said several times on this channel, you never know for sure people's situations, right? You don't know. Like just the other day, I saw that Kardashian is gifting one of her friends a Cybertruck, and who knows if Tesla gave her the Cybertruck to give the friend and to promote on social media. That kind of stuff, you don't know. You have no idea. That kind of thing. And I've always asked you this kind of things like, do you think Kardashian does anything for free? Of course not. But who knows? Right? I have no proof of the contracts or anything. But that's a simple example of what is reality. And as we go through this angst, be it your economic and mental illness come out of the pandemic, you also have this explosion of technology and say our markets that has enabled us to trade quicker than we ever had before. We have law changes that also make things possible that weren't possible before, right? More gambling on sports, more gambling on elections, even in our stock market, right? Saying about financial markets, the way that we do the trades and the settlements are quicker now, and money flows much faster, right? And then you have this rise of cryptocurrencies that also even challenging the way that we do things. Going into 2025, I feel like it's more of that, challenging a lot of these systems in place that have been around for a long time. Some maybe do need to go, right? Because there's other ways to do things, and others maybe we do need to keep. But that's what we're wrestling with right now. We're struggling to figure out, okay, where do we go from here? I'll give you a simple example. Think about the USA. Okay, long time ago, we're a bunch of farmers, basically, right? Agrarian, economy. And then ultimately, then you move into okay, we're a bunch of factory workers, right? And then you go forward, and you're like, okay, I'm trying to remember what comes after that. You guys can let me know. But okay, you could probably say Great Depression, and then World War II, and then after that, then we're back to producing a bunch of goods for the rest of the world. We're big trading country at that point, and then we start to go into financial market country, and then into information age country. And I just kind of give you a brief history of where we are. But talking about where we are today, I feel like there's a lot of people's jobs out there that is completely disconnected from quote real world, right? Very few of us build buildings. Very few of us grow food, right? Like just part of our daily life kind of stuff. I just gave you just two examples, shelters and buildings, or shelters and food, I should say. I mentioned that because, say, my growing up, and I write about my book, and you guys can check out, it's called Positive Angle on Amazon. Um, I grew up around construction workers, so I grew up around construction sites all the time, and so I always, for me, connected work with physical labor. You put in time or whatever, and get paid for your time, by the hour essentially. Or I used to bale hay on the farm, or I used to pick berries when I was a kid. I talk about the stuff I grew up in Oregon. It's very hard work, these things, construction work or farm work, but there was always a connection between labor, what purpose you have in society, and then we get economic rewards, these kind of things. The older that I got, and especially when I got into high school, true story, I like those movies like Wall Street. I like those movies. I grew up, that was the Charlie Sheen one, and Michael Douglas. You guys know it's an older movie. I even had a video game on Nintendo way back when. I think it was called Wall Street Kid, if I remember correctly, or something like that. And it's like you trademark and stuff like that. And one of the things I talk about before with you guys in my book is I used to read the Wall Street Journal when I was a kid, because I worked in a grocery store. Also, I had a lot of jobs when I was a kid, but I worked in a grocery store, and it was a way for me to read the newspapers all the time. And so I would just constantly read things. And it, came in today, and that was a different time back then, because, tickers were all on paper, and it was really different back then. And they would show fractions. It was really funny. You had like this Wall Street Journal, like this whole, page of just, quotes and stuff like that. It was a different world back then. But talking about where we are today, is we're kind of going in a shift, and I'll give you some examples of some of the shifts. Google may not have a dominance anymore on sort of like search engines right now. I think all the rage is chatbots and AI stuff. And there's a wrestling of like, okay, where do we get information? So some of you, we hang out on this channel, we talk to each other about this stuff, and I try my best to share honest opinions about these things. Or so other people, for say more of the right wing, musky type of people, you're all hanging out on Twitter, etc. And we're starting to retreat to whatever silos, whatever teams that you're on. And for many people, you will only hear one particular quote, we'll call it side. One of the things that I think is challenging for people these days is hard to know what's real. The other issue, as well, is for some people, if you haven't trained your mind to, how can I say, be a critical thinker, be analytical, to question things in a positive way, right? There's different ways to question things. it became like really life shattering to you if suddenly the sort of narratives you have in your head or the ideas you have in your head are disproven, right? It can really really like damage your mental health. Like say all the things that you were taught as a kid, what if it turns out to be untrue? So for example, let's say you grew up in a house that they teach Scientology all day, and I hate to break it to you guys, Scientology is a cult. I hate to break it to you. Or everyone tells you all day every day that Elon Musk is a genius, and you're all going to go flying to Mars, which is also a cult. These kind of things can be very traumatic for people to hear different points of view on that stuff, because they're in their mind the world is only certain one kind of way. You put that on top of people are economically insecure right now, because if they haven't been keeping up with their job skills to compete in today's economy, it is really, really tough out there, right? You prepared for a world that existed, say, 30, 40 years ago, maybe work in whatever factory, and you expect to still be successful today. And then you see on social media that everyone's, supposedly getting rich all the time and living their most crazy best lives ever. And it creates a lot of angst. And so a lot of people these days are looking to gamble their way up. But I'm trying to explain the sort of like the angst that we're all feeling. And right now we have basically entertainers in chief, be it, the Trumps and the Musks, and they're promoting all sorts of crazy narratives. So it's really hard to navigate this world. To be perfectly frank, guys, I'm actually pretty happy every day. That's why I make jokes. That's why I smile and stuff like that. I get upset, of course. We all get upset in certain things. I really go, oh my god. Lately it's been the car crash situation in Germany, and I feel very sorry for the people who were killed and the people who were injured. I feel very sorry about that, and I hope things don't worsen there. Um, and I see people like Musk just pouring gasoline on the fire, and so that's when I read your comments, especially for the person who says a father, and he has two kids, two boys, saying 12 and 8, who worship Musk or Trump or whatever. It makes me feel very concerned about the world, because there's so much out there to navigate, and a lot of what those kind of people are doing is really trying to steer you in certain directions, that in my opinion are very very negative. And I think it's obvious to anyone who's old enough to see this stuff before. But for many people out there, they feel like they need to belong to a particular group, right? They need a particular group to belong to, and they need a particular group to blame. And it's a sad thing, right? And you can make the case to say, oh, Chris, aren't you blaming Trump and Musk for everything? You can make that case. I understand that. You're like, Chris, you're sort of part of that culture. Yeah, I can see it. I'll let you make that case. But I try and explain sort of why the world that we live in is the way that it is. I also have a different perspective than others. When I was in the classroom, and I also worked in Hollywood, which is a different issue. But I mention that is because when you're in the classroom, face to face with people from all kinds of backgrounds, right? So you get used to having these kind of conversations, and I actually used to force it with my students. The most difficult conversations being on, literature, politics, history, culture, etc., because I want them you're there and on the channel your mind to be active, to just be triggering lots of different things. um, I find myself energized by reading your guys' comments and just thoughts, and I think this is sort of what makes the world a better place is more understanding. So, like I said, I understand the people who lust after these wealthy Musks and Trumps. I totally get it, right? They need to feel like they're part of a winning team. They need to connect. If they're having problems in their life, they need to connect to like someone who's quote winning, and that makes them feel like they're winning too, even though that they're not, which is kind of sad. And part of what happens if you want to sort of free yourself from that negative world is keep improving your life, your skills, your financial situation. Being honest with you, your financial situation, to where no matter what comes down the pipeline, there's always going to be some sort of tragedy in the world. There just always will. I've seen enough to know, but that you're going to weather the storm okay, right? And do I have all the answers for you to whether your financial storm? I'm be honest with you, it's tough. I don't have all the answers for you. I try to tell you what's going on in the markets the best of my ability, and sort of what's going on. So like right now, I feel like we're definitely in a bubble. How long is a bubble going to last in terms of our markets? That's hard to say. Will it pop in January? Will it pop in January 2026? one of these periods is, I mean, I feel like it can't go forever. That's just my gut instinct is telling me that. But yet here we are, right? It's the bubble keeps on and going. But we are increasingly in a world, and this goes back to sort of this whole cultural thing that we're talking about. Or say start with our markets that is completely disconnected from reality, right? And so if our markets are disconnected from reality, and our say political news or history even is disconnected from reality, right? So you could argue, say for example, with the Musk situation in Germany, if Germans want to rewrite history, that's a real problem. And it's not just Germany, guys. We have the situation is in Japan. They have a right-wing nationalism there. We have a right-wing nationalism here in Korea. You'll find it in China. You'll find it in USA. And when you say right-wing, and it's not exactly a one-to-one. We'll just say this: people who decide to conveniently leave out certain parts of history and rewrite history to favor their narratives, to build a sort of pseudo nationalism to inspire violence among youth to attack another group of people, that kind of thing, and then consolidate power for whatever leaders. It is a trend around the world. So it's like I said, it's multiple places. I'll give you examples. So here in Korea, President Yoon, he was just impeached, and the speech he gave right before impeachment, he did like a speech. I'm not making this up. It was like all these like YouTube conspiracy theories, that kind of stuff. It really was, because I had heard rumors that he was following right-wing YouTubers, and that turned out to be true. You saw it in the speech. Stuff in Japan, just give you an example, because I understand this is a global thing. Stuff in Japan would be like, we used to be a strong Japanese empire, and we need to, raise up our military again and take power again and defend ourselves, and that kind of stuff. And you'll hear these kind of rhetorics from multiple places. It's the idea that whenever we have any sort of economic problem, we got to build up more weapons essentially, and kick out people who aren't like us. That's essentially what it boils down to. And I can't speak for every country in the world. Like, I don't know if Australians have this kind of like, we got to make our military strong again, and kick out people who aren't Australian, and that kind of stuff. I don't know. I can't speak to Australia. I can't speak to every country in the world, but I'll just say that this is a phenomenon that's happened. And I'll give you an example of the Germany and the Japan thing. There was a fight for a long time, and I don't know about today. I can't comment on that. But when I was in grad school, it was actually one of my big topics of interest, because I always thought it was fascinating, not in a good way, but just for a point of research, to where countries will really 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 how can I say, careful on how they write their history textbooks. If you get people who are more in sort of the rewriter history people, they'll want to say, well, when we do textbooks in classrooms, we don't want to make our kids feel anything bad about our country, right? And so in Japan or Germany, there'd be some textbooks out there that completely erase the stuff that they did during World War II. The same way that, say, in USA, you have Republicans that say, well, we shouldn't talk about, what happened to the Native American land, or we shouldn't, talk about, any kind of thing with slavery. We shouldn't talk about, any sort of experiments on prisoners, like this guy, like whatever, right? I'm just giving different examples here. Or we shouldn't talk about any sort of, inequalities or this kind of stuff. And sort of the reality that you choose to live in affects how you see the world today. And the world is probably way more complicated than you realize. And a lot of these things are ongoing conversations. It's how I honestly, it's how I deal with stress. If you guys don't know, we probably figured it out. I talk to myself all the time. My wife is used to it, actually, because mostly, I literally go through and read through all your comments, and I'm always thinking about, things I wish I could address, because this is always so much to address every single day. But I think the big one right now is what is real, what is not real, and the change in technology of how we consider what truthful information is really rupturing a lot in society. And you put that on top of the economic angst that a lot of people are feeling. So that's my thoughts on this stuff. I hope it makes sense to you, and I want to hear your thoughts if you know what I'm getting at. And I'll catch you on the next video.